The Police and Crime Commissioner for Leicestershire has said he's banned all his staff from communicating with the Black Lives Matter political organisation BLM UK. Writing in the Conservative home blog, Rupert Matthews says, "Why are we meeting an organisation that wants to defund the police, has put police officers in hospital and desecrated the cenotaph in London?" And he has a point, doesn't he? He's joining us now, so he can tell us more about that. Joining us this morning is not that Police and Crime Commissioner, but we can speak to the chair of Suffolk Stop and Search Reference Group and former president of the National Black Police Association, Franstine Jones. Welcome, Franstine. What do you make of this ban by this Police and Crime Commissioner for Leicestershire, saying that he has said to his staff no communication whatsoever with the organisation Black Lives Matter?
When I heard this story, a few things popped into my head, really. First of all, I've looked at the Black Lives Matter UK site, which is a non-political, non-partisan party. So they're not linked to the American version of the Black Lives Matters. Secondly, did he consult with his staff that he was going to make this and then make his decision? Thirdly, is he breaking their human rights with regards to freedom of expression? And I just think the headline is quite inflammatory. And what impact would that have on the black community in Leicester? And I just think it's really unfortunate and disappointing that they've got a new PCC who has chosen to take this stance in quite an authoritarian manner. And I don't think it bodes well for community relations to have a PC to come out and say that he bans his staff. He can't ban police officers and police staff, but he chooses to ban his own staff. And it then makes me question, well, what is the ethnic makeup of his staff as well? So all of those thoughts are going through my mind. And I just think it's a really inflammatory thing to say that Black Lives Matters put police officers in hospital. I think he needs to do a little bit more research around Black Lives Matters in UK and not think about what the Black Lives Matters in America and their stance where they want to defund the police. So I think he needs to do a bit more background information and be a bit more engaging with his staff.
I take your point that they are two different organisations. The Black Lives Matter UK is not necessarily affiliated with the American version, but they are still part of the same movement, aren't they? And yes, it might not be to the extent that it is in America, but Black Lives Matter is a collective. It is one sort of a movement. And so do you take his point that actually by affiliating themselves with the American organisation, which started first, which does want to do things like defund the police, then they're sort of signing up to those sorts of ideologies?
Did you say that they were or were not affiliated to the Americans?
So officially, they're not. This is a sort of completely different UK branch, and I take that point that you're trying to make. But I just mean they associate themselves with the same ideas. And so do you take his point that the underlying ideology behind it is the same as the American one?
Their ideas is actually to fight against race inequality, race discrimination, and racism. So that's their ideals. And I don't see anything wrong with that. And I think that's something that this country should stand up for, and what the government say they stand up for. So actually, when you look at what they stand for, which is about addressing race inequality, again, like I said, I think he needs to do a bit more research into what Black Lives Matters UK stands for.
And for you, I mean, I think we can all say everybody, well, the overwhelming majority of people sign up to wanting to improve race relations in this country, and we want to fight racism. I think regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, that's something we can sign up to. For me, I do think it's a bit disingenuous when people say Black Lives Matter is only about sort of that underlying concept we can all sign up to about tackling racism. They do have other political motivations. They are quite hostile towards the police, and I think when he says about those hospitalizations, he's alluding to sort of the violence we saw on some minority of people during those protests. Black Lives Matter is surely about much more politically than just fighting racism, which we can all sign up to.
I think this term, when people say, well, Black Lives Matters, all lives matters, for me, my interpretation of that is, if Black lives do matter, then everybody's lives matters. And I think that's the stance that I take, that the reason why we talk about Black Lives Matters is at the moment Black lives don't matter, because it's quite clear in the structures, the policies, the disproportionality, the discrimination, the racism that you see everywhere in society, that isn't the case.
I'm wondering, Franstine, if we can make a distinction, perhaps, between the Black Lives Matter movement, which clearly inspired a lot of people in this country last summer. Many people who aren't particularly political in their normal life went out to protest and nobly fight for racial justice. Can we make a bit distinction between the people who went on those protests and this political organisation, BLM UK, which seems to be more political, seems to have a manifesto, seems to take stances that might be actually quite divisive?
As I said, on their website, it states that they are not political. So I don't think you could argue that case that they are a political party, because they've stated that they're not.
It's a manifesto.
They're not a party. We're not saying they're a political party, a registered political party.
No, I didn't say a political party. They don't have a political stance.
I think they do have political stances, though, because they've published a manifesto of saying things that they want the government specifically to do. And I'm just making the point that perhaps people on those marches who want to see a change in police attitudes, who might want to see a much more racially equal society, don't necessarily ascribe to every single political demand of the BLM organisation.
Yes, I would agree with that. I think what really moved people, and it wasn't just in this country, it was globally, what moved people with regards to the marches that we had, it was about the race inequality that they were not aware was happening, and in particular to the use of police powers and the disproportionality in stop and search, tasers, being handcuffed. I think it opened a lot of people's eyes, and it was very uncomfortable seeing what happened to George Floyd. And I think it stirred feelings and emotions in everybody across the globe. So that, for me, is why that movement happened. And then people will interpret the things that they do and say. And this manifesto, I haven't seen the manifesto, so I can't really comment on that. But from what I've seen on their website, I totally understand where they're coming from. And a lot of people that I speak to, they support mildly or lightly Black Lives Matters, but they don't sign up to the political element or perceived political element of it.
And just one last question. You said you don't agree that he should ban engagement with Black Lives Matter UK. Clearly,
no, I didn't say. I didn't. What I said was, he should have consulted. Did he consult with his staff? What is the makeup of his staff? From my understanding, there was a meeting and then he announced this restriction.
So how do you think he should, for police and crime commissioners across the country who might be thinking of following similar steps, what would be your sort of recommendation on how to properly go about dealing with an issue instead of just sort of deciding to come in one day and banning them? Because I think that's what you're saying. It's the method by which he did it that's problematic.
Yeah, I think that they should consult first before they make a decision, because to just make a decision like that to staff and not even give them a chance to engage and contribute to the discussion seems really authoritarian. So if I was a black or brown person working in his office, I would be thinking, if that's your stance and your method of engaging with your staff, I'd feel really uncomfortable. I wouldn't feel safe working in that environment.
Well, Franstine, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Franstine is former president of the National Black Police Association.